Good afternoon, folks. This video today is to help describe a little bit more when I talk about um, adoption being used by the powers that be to create a certain type of negative behavior among the people, which doesn't make much sense to anyone. Why would you want to do that? Well, it's very simple. I mean, we need to look. What is enlightenment, right? It's getting real. It's getting honest with ourselves. It's getting honest with the world we live in, um, and being able to see things how they are and not how we wish them to be. And I mean, I guess what you need to realize is that some people are in charge. Some people have, and some people do not have, the haves and the have-nots. And the people that have is a smaller percentage, obviously, and they want to keep it that way. Now, how do you go about doing that? Well, you've got to be in control of people. So, in a way, you have to be your brother's keeper. And that doesn't always mean doing the right things to your brother. And that's where we get into situations of justification. We're justifying to ourselves these sort of things, and that process is carried out on a mass scale, and it's done through the education system. It's done through propaganda, through our television sets. It's done through psychology, the medical industry, all these things. Um, But what do you end up with when you end up with bastard children? Well, you end up in an increase and rise in crime. The big push and the reasoning behind the adoption was children out without fathers are going to be in a worse situation. Well, the solution wasn't to remove their mothers as well and give them to some random strangers and call them mother and father. Psychologically, that doesn't work. And that's a made up thing. You're just writing mother and father on a piece of paper. You're not actually creating a new mother and father. But if you do this en masse, you do end up with some results. Okay, so the first result comes through psychology, which is traumatizing the baby in the first 0 to 18 months, which is called the oral phase. Now, what is the result if you fuck somebody up in their oral phase? Well, they have an oral fixation. Now, what sort of things are involved in oral fixations? Gum chewing? Do you want to? Here's what my first phrase was as a child. I want gum. Right? So there's the kids version of the oral fixation. Then it leads into smoking and drinking, etc. So orally, you're constantly what and why? Well, it's pretty damned obvious why. Because you didn't get the nipple. You didn't get breastfed. I mean, what doctor can you find on planet Earth? And I'm not even going to say that because you can find a doctor to sell out for any cause, right? Competition's everywhere, and shitty people are everywhere, and people who are shitty at their professions are everywhere, willing to sell out for $1. Um, and that's just reality. We have to deal with that. So, I mean, if you want a doctor to say something, all you got to do is start looking for one that will, meet your price. Like, I will say this for this much money. This is how everything works, right? So, why would you want that? For money. More customers. I mean, there's more and more people that smoke, the more and more people that realize it's unhealthy for them and suffer consequences. So you got to keep you got to constantly feed the Ponzi scheme and get more and more people hooked. And and while they're hooked, they will defend that smoking and drinking to the bitter end. You can't fight with these people. So you get the majority on your team. Well, there's nothing wrong with smoking and drinking. Well, if you step outside of it objectively, if you can do that, which is bloody hard if you're involved in smoking or drinking, so disclude yourself if you are. But if you could step out of it objectively and look at all the science, your own personal experience with it, if you have that, then you'll know that it was toxic for you. It caused you to do things that were wrong, spend money where you shouldn't, etc., etc. You were involved in addiction. And that addiction was fueled by the fact that you were affected during your oral phase. So, why do you want millions and millions of people doing that? For profit in the billions and billions of dollars. Even the government's in on it. In Canada, they profiteer just as much as the companies producing the toxic addictive products, alcohol and cigarettes. The government profits off it. They're in on the scam. They're dope dealers, they're dope pushers. So, if your government is dope dealers and dope pushers, are you surprised that they would create scenarios to profiteer from that more? I'm not. Why are you? Why would anybody be? So, yeah, you want to sit there and say, no one would do that. They're doing it. They've been doing it for years and years and years. Don't be so bloody naive. And then on top of this all, I'm gonna chime in here on the marijuana legalization thing that's going around all over the place. Well, let's face the bloody facts. Marijuana, as it stands, is a frickin' herb. It relaxes you, calms you down, and what does relaxation and being calm do? Well, you don't need to feed your anxiety, right? So, I mean, that doesn't seem very profitable to anyone. We don't want people calm. We want them scared, anxious, yada, yada, yada. That's what we produce. Those are the kind of people because they consume nonstop, right? To give themselves some comfort, right? That's what it is. These comfort things, right? Comfort food, comfort sleeping, comfort addictions, comfort, comfort, comfort. Because we're constantly bombarded with things that should be making us fearful and anxious. So that's the scam. That's the deal. That's what's going on in the world, and you can see it everywhere you look. You know, you want to talk about creating mental illness, just look at these reality television shows. What are they telling you? To win the game, you have to be a narcissist, a psychopath, a liar, deceptive, etc., etc. To win the game. It's reality. It's TV. What is it telling you about reality? It's telling you to do the wrong things. That's what the whole world is telling you. Do the wrong things. Eat the poison. Drink the Kool-Aid. Blah, 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 blah. So I guess the first things first, you have to quit thinking that the governing body is trying to help you out. No, they sold out a long time ago, and you don't get into those positions unless you've sold out hard. So that might sound conspiracy theorist to some, but I mean, all you need to do is get a hold of vital statistics. Ask the question, look at the statistics. The statistics tell you the truth. And if you don't like the truth, then don't look at the statistics because I mean, it's the exact opposite of what they tell you. You know, we want to help out these poor mothers that are being abandoned by these horrible fathers. That's not the truth. They want to get rid of marriage and the family unit. Look at the statistics. That's what happens when you bring in these court-ordered systems. So the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. But don't eat the pudding because you shouldn't be eating the meat anyways. How can you have your pudding if you don't eat your meat? See that little trade-off? Pudding's not good for you. Meat's not good for you. But anyways, I mean, I could go on and on and on all day long showing you where things don't line up with what you're being told. But you can do that yourself. Anytime someone is saying, look at what they're telling you, look at what the show is telling you, just keep it simple. What is this telling me? Is this true? Is this a benefit to me? Or is this leading me down a path of consumerism for someone else's profit? You know, or leading you to poor health for someone else's profit. Because anything negative that's happening to you is profitable to someone else. So that being said, is what is happening to you by chance or is it by design? And I think you're going to find in every case it's by design. And once you get the facts on the table, and it's hard to do that because you got someone else trying to, brush them under the table. But once you get the facts on the table, people have no choice but to look at them. Unfortunately, they don't want those facts on the table until, they've got everything lined up for the next invention. So there's the marijuana for you. The reason, and I can see this happening quite clearly and how it will take place, is that they can't hide the fact of how brutal cigarettes are anymore. They can't hide how, and I don't know if tobacco was this horrid thing that it is today, considering the thousands of chemicals they pump into this shit that make it, just a one-stop shop for, sickness and money and addiction and all these things. But since that jig is somewhat up, I mean, I'm sure there's still people hanging on to the fact that somehow smoking cigarettes is good for you and it doesn't bother you and blah, 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 and you can quit whenever you want. Sure. The point being is 90% of people are aware now that if they don't get off the cigarettes, they're going to be killed by them. And not to mention that, I mean, you're spending upwards of $15 to $20 a day for a pack of smokes in Canada, which I mean is I mean that's rent almost. So that being said, they the government doesn't lose. They don't want to lose money, so what are they going to do? Well, they got to have a replacement in the coming up the line for the cigarettes, and what better scenario than marijuana? Because I mean, already people are illegally taking that marijuana and relaxing and maybe solving some of their health problems like cancer and these other things that they're talking about that some of the things in marijuana are actually good for doing. Now, me personally, I use a small amount of marijuana before I go to sleep, medicinally. All right. I can and have given it up. I gave it up for a year just to make sure that it wasn't a full addiction. But it does a little bit before bed. It helps me relax, helps me sleep. I've gone through hell. Uh, I allow myself that little bit of comfort instead of taking the doctor prescribed sleeping pills and daily like antipsychotics for sleeping. They now will prescribe to you. But marijuana, yeah, think, look at things realistically, uh, remove the opinions that have been dumped on you by the powers that be, the propaganda, the television, the reefer madness. Look at the lies for what they are, look at where those lies are coming from, and then ask yourself, do I need to believe anything that these people are telling me, or am I better off to use my own eyes, my own ears, and really pay attention and if you've got 43 years in like me, well, hopefully you've had enough experience that you can look at some things and go, wait a second, no, I'm not taking that as truth. I'm going to do my own research in this, and you can apply that to everything because there's just the world is yours. It's yours. You have a right to it, and how you perceive it and how you interact with it is up to you. I mean, you're going to have to suffer some consequences if you tromp on other people's same rights. But at the same token, let's try and get back to a place of the constitutions that some of our countries came to, in that, freedom is important, individual liberty, etc., etc. Let's try and respect that in other people's. Let's try to come together in communities. Let's try and support one another in our situations. And let's try and not to be so goddamn, what's the word I'm looking for? Patronizing to others when they're trying to learn these things. And let's not be so goddamn fanatical about our situations. Like you found Reiki and, oh my God, I'm enlightened. Yeah, keep going. Okay, that's one thing. Keep going. No one's enlightened. The moment you think you're enlightened is the moment you realize you got infinite to go. Okay, so that's your playground now, is the infinite, and there's no end. So if you think you're enlightened, you start over. Okay, and get out of that trap that you've gotten yourself into. All I'm talking about is trying to get to a place where you as an individual, me as an individual, can be independent individuals. We can love one another, um, and we have the freedoms to pursue our own spiritual, pursue our own health, and do the things that are right for us and our community, without interference and people trying to, you know, hurt us in the end. So I don't know if that answers fully the question, but the point is that when you get into the bureaucratic sort of crap, which I'm not in, but when you start getting into the social engineering aspect of thing, everything comes down to statistics, psychology, these sort of things. So if you apply something to 1,000 people, you're going to get a certain result in certain percentages. That being said, it might seem horrible and unbelievable that someone would cause cancer, cause heart disease, cause these horrid things for profit, but they do every single day for decades, centuries, millennia, whatever. There's people out there hurting you for their own benefit. And the moment you accept that and realize that and become aware of it, a lot of answers will become pretty obvious to you. And they're going to come and you're going to go, okay, why? Well, they're looking out for themselves, right? Or they're jaded, or they're this, or they're that. But at the end of the day, we need to accept it, and then we can move forward realistically and work together to help ourselves and help others, and be called kooks doing it, or conspiracy theorists, or whatever. But I mean, it's all out in open public, open forum. I mean, Bertrand Russell, John Watson, Pavlov's dog, all those things are in practice. Take a look.